Are you in a controlling relationship and you really just don't know what to do, how you can break free from the controlling narcissist? Well, if that's you, join me as we discuss how to break free from a controller, part two. Well, hey everyone, and welcome back. I'm Robert, and we started talking the other day about control, specifically you being controlled or being in a controlling relationship. Many of you are in relationships where the person that you're in that relationship with is controlling. Now, control can come in a lot of different ways, and we'll get to that eventually. If you want to know more right away, I'd recommend that you go ahead and get our new book. We just came out with this, my wife and I. It's called Enough: Liberating Yourself from Controlling Jezebelic Relationships. Now, in part one of this discussion of how to break free from a controller, I talked about the first thing you need to do is come out of denial. In other words, just admit it. Just acknowledge the fact that you are being controlled. Doesn't matter who it's from, whether a parent, a child, a loved one, a boyfriend, girlfriend, a spouse, significant other, a pastor, a leader, your boss. It doesn't matter. Just come to the realization that you are being controlled. See, once you realize you're being controlled, then you can begin the journey of coming out of being controlled by someone else, because we're not designed to be controlled by other people. Only we should control ourselves. It's called self-control. Now, number two in what needs to happen to break free from a controller is vitally important once you come out of denial. And that is this: establishing healthy boundaries. It's imperative that you establish boundaries. Quite frankly, if boundaries had been established in the first place and you communicated those boundaries early on in your relationship, you most likely would have not at least remained in that controlling relationship. You would have divested from the relationship. You would have just said, thanks, but no thanks, let me move on. But when we don't have boundaries, we open ourselves up to controllers. Now, as we talk about boundaries, I want to start out by saying what a boundary is not. Okay? A boundary is more of a border. It's not a wall. It's a fence, as it were. It's a line. It's basically saying, look, this is where your life ends and mine begins, or vice versa. Okay? We don't want to put up walls in our life. When we put up walls in our life, and I understand that people who have experienced emotional pain, physical abuse, there is a propensity to guard ourselves. And I think it's somewhat natural that we do that, to guard ourselves and build up walls in our lives. The problem is we can build walls of unforgiveness, bitterness, and these walls actually end up becoming self-sabotage or self-limiting beliefs and systems that we set up in our own life that don't provide you with the freedom to actually express your love or express yourself, and of course receive love from people who do genuinely love you. So you want to be careful that you don't create walls. Okay, now boundaries, like I said, are more like a fence. Okay, you can think of it maybe perhaps as a chain link fence, or something like that. But if you don't have boundaries, if you don't establish boundaries, and quite frankly, there are many that don't establish boundaries because we're not taught this stuff. We're not taught this when we're young. Typically, we come from homes, families where boundaries were not established there. We don't learn it in school, academia. It's just not there. And largely, we don't learn it in our churches. Quite frankly, churches look at boundaries in many cases as being evil, which is simply just not true. People that don't establish boundaries are viewed by controlling people, narcissists and Jezebelians alike, as limitless. In other words, there's no limits to what you will or won't do. Weak, unstable in all your ways. Okay. So the controller looks for you not to have boundaries. Okay. Now, once you establish boundaries, okay, the controller is going to become very, very frustrated with you. You're essentially saying no. And when you say no to a controller, or again, a narcissistic type of person, or someone who's bound by the spirit of Jezebel, that person will move, that controller will move from a controlling person to a frustrating person. So one of the things boundaries does is it frustrates the controller because they're so used to getting their way. They're so used to orchestrating this, this theatrical script where you do what they say that you need to be doing, and it's always for them. So just exactly what is a boundary? We now know that a boundary is not a wall that we put up in our heart to where we can't freely receive and give love. So what is a boundary? A boundary is similar, like I said, to a fence or a property line. Okay, if you have a fence around your home, you're letting people know that this is where they should stop. Okay, they don't have a right to enter into this area. Some people in their homes, they put up fences and they say, no trespassing. Others even set up a fence and say no trespassing and add something else that says beware of dog, because they're letting people know that if you cross into this territory, you're entering at your own risk and there will be consequences should you do it. So it's very important that you have these boundaries to let people know where they should stop and they do not have a right to enter in. Now, when someone trespasses on someone else's property, and by the way, your life is your property, okay? There's usually consequences, and some of those consequences can be very, very severe, okay? Personal boundaries protect you by setting this clear line between you and other people. And if somebody's a controller, them. And it's important that you remember that it's your responsibility to set those boundaries. Nobody can do it or should do it for you. If other people set boundaries for you, again, you're being controlled. But these healthy boundaries and you have to be careful here, these healthy boundaries that you need to set up in your life, don't place demands or control on other people, because the boundary is not for them. The boundary is for you. Boundaries are designed solely to protect your own personal space, okay? So it's important to remember that when you set these boundaries for you, you're saying, this is about me, about my life, and I'm in charge and I'm taking control of my life. So therefore, this is where my life starts and your life will end as far as the impact that it has on me. Now, it's important to communicate these boundaries, especially with controllers or people that are, you're in a controlling relationship with somebody. Very important that you communicate these. You can do it in writing, you can do it verbally, you can do it a lot of different ways, but they need to be expressed and communicated, because boundaries not expressed are not boundaries at all, okay? So you need to share your boundaries. You need to be consistent in sharing those boundaries and refresh the controller many times that, hey, you're trying to control, okay? Stop. If they continue, then we're going to go to step 2, which is the consequences. Now, I just want to say something very quickly here, that when setting boundaries, be prepared from a controller for them to look to retaliate against your boundary with their boundary. I've seen this happen multiple times where I may say to someone, look, this is the boundary. Let's say, for example, I say, well, I have a boundary that when somebody starts cussing me out or cursing me out, that I stop my conversation with them and I will leave the room. I've said that to controllers, and controllers immediately, because they're frustrated and they don't want to lose control, they come back and say, well, my boundary is, and they'll say X, Y, and Z. You don't want to go tit for tat with that. You just want to establish your boundary and say, okay, well, I respect your boundary as well, whatever your boundary is. As long as their boundary doesn't look to control you, then you can live peaceably with that. Everybody should have boundaries, and we all need to respect each other's boundaries, okay? So If you don't express boundaries, then again, you're telling people that I have no limits, that could be very dangerous, especially in relationships. Okay. You're signaling to that person that you don't know how to take care of yourself, or you're not responsible for yourself. And then you're going to open yourself up to attracting people who want to control you. And this can lead you to places of mental, emotional, physical, sexual abuse by other people. Now, when a boundary has been violated, okay, so you have this boundary and the person just blows right through the boundary. Boundaries must always have consequences to any violation. Okay, remember, boundary is a fence. I think back to when I was a kid, and I remember there were fences and you would see barbed wire on top of the fence. And sometimes kids would be mischievous and try to climb the fence. And if they got cut, that was the consequence. The fence says, hey, stay out. But when somebody says, well, I'm going to test it and I'm going to go ahead and try to climb that fence and enter into that private space, which in this case is your life, and there's barbed wire, well, they're going to be sliced up pretty good. Barbed wire does not feel good when you get cut by it. Okay. It will have an effect on you. Okay. Now, that's not you doing anything evil. You didn't cut them. They cut themselves. Again, that fence that's there says clearly, do not enter. Even if it didn't have a sign, we know just naturally that when a fence, the reason the fence is there is because people don't want you in. Okay. And if we climb and we hit that barbed wire, bam, we're going to get cut up. Well, it's the same thing with boundaries in your own life. Okay. If people disregard your fence, then the consequence, that barbed wire, okay, needs to have some type of impact in their life. Now, remember, whatever the consequences that you created, okay, it's not you that is implementing. I shouldn't say implementing. It's not you that's cutting them or the consequence that they have. It's really not your decision. They made the decision. So, for example, concerning a personal boundary that may be violated, okay, one of the consequences to a narcissistic controller or Jezebelian controller would be that you may go temporarily no contact because they're blowing through your boundary or severing the relationship. Okay. It could be that you have a boundary that says, look, let's use physical abuse, for example. I have a 1 strike rule. Okay. If there's physical abuse anytime, and that means, physical abuse can be not only punching and slapping, but pulling, yanking, throwing dishes, whatever it may be, that, you know what, game over. All right. We're not going to go down this path. I'm not going to allow myself to be abused by you. Okay. Now, again, I could talk a long time about boundaries, and I would recommend that you connect with us and get an appointment with us, a coaching appointment. We have a lot of different areas where you can get the help that you need. Okay. And we're good at it. We can provide that help for you. And you can go to icanadvance.com and check out all the different coaching lanes that we have to help you in these type of areas, specifically setting boundaries. Okay. So lastly, boundaries is an area that people do struggle with for a lot of different reasons. And one of the most significant obstacles with cutting the cord or going no contact or severing a relationship is that people view that somehow that consequence equals a lack of love. Okay. Listen, don't let anybody ever put that junk into your mind. Making healthy choices for yourself by establishing firm boundaries and deploying your consequences, all right, when boundaries are violated, is not a lack of love for other people. Quite frankly, and on the contrary, it's actually an expression of love towards God, your creator, our creator, your neighbor, and yourself, because you are saying, look, I value myself. I love myself in so much that I will have boundaries, and my boundaries are not designed to control anybody else. They're designed to communicate to people out there that this is where their life ends and my life starts. Okay. Remember, it's your boundary. You can establish it. You can set it up any way you want. Just remember, it's your boundary, and it's not designed to control other people. It's designed to protect you. Hey, listen, I hope that this helped you out a little bit. Check this out. Go to our website, icanadvance.com. Click on the product section. We have a lot of different materials for you. Not only this book, but we have others. We have videos. We have schools. We have a lot of educational tools for you. You can also get this book on Amazon.com. Just type in Robert and Dixie Summers, and I'm certain that you'll be able to locate it. If you need coaching, hear me clearly. If you need coaching, please set up your appointment. Get the coaching that you deserve. Invest. It's time to invest in yourself and come out from the control of other people. All right. God bless you. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time with lesson number 3.